we have distorted. We have produced nothing for the common benefit of mankind. Chedayev's sweeping and harsh pronouncements had the effect, in the words of the political thinker and activist Alexander Gertsin, of a pistol shot in the dead of night. Tsar Nicholas I declared Chedayev insane and put him under house arrest. Among Russia's educated elite, Chedayev's pronouncements generated excitement of a different sort. Intellectuals took Chedayev's views seriously and initiated a passionate debate that quickly divided them into two groups, the Slavophiles and the Westerners. And in one form or another, their historical and philosophical discussions continue to this very day. An observer of contemporary conditions in Russia reported from Moscow in the Times Literary Supplement of 19 November 1999 that, in Russian intellectual life, a conversation that was cut off and redirected after the Bolshevik Revolution has resumed its course. Its basic theme? East, West, whence, and whither Russia. The Slavophiles and Westerners of the early 19th century were not at odds with each other over all public issues. For example, both groups believed that such deeply rooted features of Russian society as serfdom and government censorship should be abolished. But beyond that, they parted company. The Slavophiles were profoundly religious and revered Russian Orthodoxy, a faith they considered to be much more spiritual than Western Christendom, which they disdained as allegedly under the thrall of cold rationalism. They also disdained Western conceptions of law as destructive of the social bonds that hold society together. In Russia, the Slavophiles claimed, people settled conflicts not by litigation, but by discussing their differences in a kindly manner and by unanimous agreement. Nor did the Slavophiles believe in the efficacy of constitutional government, then widely advocated in the West, though they did condemn the arbitrary bureaucracy that meddled in the lives of the Russian people. And the Slavophiles did not favor the institution of private property for peasants, preferring instead the tradition of communal ownership of land that had evolved in many regions of the Russian countryside. They insisted that the attempts of reformers ever since Tsar Peter the Great in the early 18th century to introduce Western institutions and values into Russia should be rejected, for they undermined the meritorious features of Russian civilization. By contrast, the Westerners, a group with diverse views on how to improve conditions in Russia, tended to be secularists and were highly critical of the historical path their country had followed. Although they were no less patriotic than the Slavophiles, they insisted that Russia was a backward country in need of fundamental change. Some Westerners were socialists, some were liberals, but they all respected the achievements of Europe in science and, more generally, in education, and they favored the replacement of Tsarist autocracy with constitutional government. There is good reason for this sharp divergence of opinion on Russia's past. The history of the country is highly complex, and on many critical developments the evidence is so scanty that a consensus is hard to come by. Of course, the histories of nearly all countries are replete with uncertainties, but in the case of Russia, an additional factor has stimulated controversy. Ever since the 9th century AD, the country has been subjected to a wide range of different influences whose impact is hard to gauge. Until the mid-13th century, the economic, social, and political institutions of Rus, as the country was then known, bore certain similarities to those in Central and Western Europe. But the Mongol invasions of 1237, which marked the beginning of 2 centuries of foreign domination, deepened the isolation of Rus from Western Europe that had begun in the late 12th century and influenced cultural trends in various ways. Cut off from the West, Russia remained largely unaffected by the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, the Scientific Revolution of the 17th, and the Enlightenment of the 18th, all movements that promoted individualism and rationalism. Russia also differed from most European countries in several other respects. The Industrial Revolution, which beginning in the mid-18th century produced vast economic and social changes in the West, did not take hold in Russia until late in the 19th century. Moreover, serfdom, an institution that had largely disappeared in Central and Western Europe by the 16th century, became firmly entrenched in Russia in 1649 when a new code of law reaffirmed the subservient condition of peasants. Serfdom was not abolished until 1861. Moreover, the principle of autocracy, long challenged in the West and seriously undermined by the French Revolution of